You're listening to an archived Cabral Concept podcast. After listening to this show, check out the most up-to-date podcasts available at stephencabral.com/podcasts or search directly on iTunes. And now, welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Total Wellness Tuesday episode, where we are going to be going over 3 forgotten fasting truths from Ayurvedic medicine that I really feel no one is talking about. Although intermittent fasting and fasting in general has become very popular, for the most part, people are overlooking how to do it correctly and how to use it with the normal physiological rhythms of the day. That means when we should be eating and when we shouldn't be eating. And I think that you will be shocked to find out how it's radically different than how the 16-8 diet and many other fasting protocols are being done today. So I want to go over that. I honestly believe that this is one of those shows where, of course, it will rattle the industry. People won't know what to make of it, and it'll be talked about, which is good, right? Because all we want to do in this industry is keep open dialogue. That's it. And I see so many people out there, they're just so dogmatic about their approach, where like, okay, everybody should be doing a carnivore diet. Everybody should be fasting for 16 hours, 12, 23 out of the 24 hours. So and everybody should be doing it, but that's not the truth. The truth is always about bioindividuality. However, there are fundamentals and foundations that Ayurvedic medicine and all of the Eastern-based modalities have proved to us and have held up now for over 5,000 years. So we want to listen to those. We want to understand that most of which we are discovering today are simply rediscoveries of facts that have already been figured out many thousands of years ago. Now you might say, well, why then isn't it obvious to everyone else? Well, here's the thing. They're there. But when you look at, well, first of all, it's written in Sanskrit. And the other is when you look at the Ayurvedic texts, it is not written in a way that is easy to interpret from someone who has not studied that form of medicine. But it's there. They just use different words than us. You know, they're not going to say fasting. They might say going into more of a anti-kapha based state, right? Like, so it's different. Vata pacifying, kapha pacifying. And I'll talk a little bit about that today. But what my job is I really feel like I'm trying to bring Ayurvedic medicine in a more of a Western vernacular. I'm certainly not bringing it to the West. Many people, such as Vasant Lad, Dr. David Frowley, Dr. Svoboda, my mentor, Dr. Pete. I mean, many people brought it to the U.S. far before I ever did. What I'm trying to do is help people make more sense of it. That's it. So trying to bring it up to more, I would say, of a where it meets functional medicine. That's it. You know, so like, here's how we prove it now. Okay, Ayurveda said this, and I just say like, listen, yes, and now it's proven, and here's the studies to back that up. So what I want to share with you right now are 3 specific truths, okay, that are fundamentally different than what people are doing right now. Okay, so the first one is this, and I don't even know which one I want to bring to you first because they're radically different. All right, but I'll go with what I just taught in the Fatlocity course. So we just launched a groundbreaking new metabolic-based course. And it doesn't tell you do this particular exercise program or even do this necessarily diet, although we provide all the diet plans and meal plans and shopping lists, etc. But what it teaches you is how to rebuild your metabolism, how to boost your metabolism to improve the sluggishness that in Ayurveda calls kapha. Well, they too, in Ayurvedic medicine, believe in a 16-8 based diet for the kapha body type. So you'd say, well, that's crazy. Like, how did they talk about that back then? Well, they didn't. They talked about it in the kapha times of the day. And I went over this. Let's see if I can find the exact one for you now. Okay, it was done on episode 1427. Just last Thursday, I alluded to it, okay? But what I want to do is go over right now, or a couple weeks ago, is that in Ayurveda, and again, I taught this, so with Fatlocity, I just want people to know, so it's a little aside right here. This is not a diet formula. This is a metabolic rebuilding system. And it comes with a 2.5-hour course that's just spread over 20-minute videos for about 11 videos or so. And what it does is it teaches you how to rebalance your estrogen and progesterone, your thyroid, blood sugar levels, inflammation, thermogenesis to speed up that heat and metabolism in the body, cortisol levels, and looking at improving sleep. All of those things that help you to burn more body fat because of how it affects your metabolism. And I always go back to this. Listen, we all know people that can eat 3,000 calories a day. They're the same height as you, yet they weigh 30 pounds less than you. Yet you're the same height as them. You eat half the calories they do, and you weigh 30 pounds more. They don't exercise. You try to exercise a little bit. What gives? It's all about metabolism, and it goes back to those 5 levels and 5 factors that I talked about over the last few Wednesdays. So if you're new to the show or you haven't tuned in on episode 1412, 1419, 1426, 1433, and tomorrow will be the 5th factor, all the different factors to rebuild your metabolism. So essentially what I try to do is give you all of this, to teach you this so that you'll hopefully put it into good practice. But here's what Ayurveda says about the 16-8, is they say this, the kapha time of the day. Now just think of kapha as the endomorph, the person that gains weight when they just look at a carbohydrate, meaning like they don't utilize them as well, right? Or they gain weight when they just look at extra calories. So whereas the vata or the ectomorph, well, they can eat a whole lot of carbs and they don't gain weight, okay? So we say the kapha time of the day, think that of more of anabolism. It refers to the earth and the water, the mass of the body. Well, it's between 6 and 10 in the morning and 6 and 10 at night. So let's think about that for a moment. So at 6 to 10 at night, the body is going into a slowing down mode. Metabolism is dropping. The sun is setting. We're moving into night. We are now working on the body actually building, repairing overnight. Okay, it's called the anabolic part of the day. Now, because we have a diurnal rhythm, okay? We're diphasic beings, where there's 2 parts of the day. 6 in the morning to 6 at night, basically, and 6 at night to 6 in the morning. Now, and if you want to know all the parts of the day, you can check out my previous podcast on the Ayurvedic times of the day that teach you about metabolism, what goes on during the day, the best times to eat, etc. Okay, so here's the thing though. The kapha time of the day also happens between 6 in the morning and 10 in the morning. The body's waking up, it's getting going for the day, it hasn't fully built up its metabolism, it's not supposed to have a heavy meal. Now keep in mind, this is how fad diets go, and that's why I really want to be careful about these super low carb diets right now. And I want to be really careful with all of these different, again, anything that swings in one direction is a fad diet. That's just the way that it is. So think about this. For years, the South Beach diet and the Atkins diet and any of those, you would have like eggs for breakfast and sausage patties and chicken sausages and ham steaks. I mean, I did it myself. Like, listen, I know, I was back into a lot of natural bodybuilding and I was looking to gain weight. And you know what? It's a good way to gain weight. You have a big breakfast. But anyway, I don't want to get into that right now. But here's the thing. So in Ayurveda, they say, when do you break your fast? If you are a body type that needs to lose a lot of weight, not 5 pounds, not 10 pounds, but if you need to lose a good amount of weight, if you're sluggish metabolism, 10 a.m. after the kapha time of the day ends in the morning. When do you eat? 10 a.m., about 1 p.m., and then 5 to 6 o'clock at night. And then you stop again. So we have a lot of people right now teaching people to skip breakfast and go till lunch and then finish up by 8 o'clock that night. It is not bad to do that. I'm not saying it's bad. I've gone over many podcasts on who shouldn't fast that long, and it's actually a lot of people. But the only way you really know for sure is if you continue to start to accumulate belly fat, or you have dysregulated blood sugar, or you are someone that has a really high stress morning. Or even better, if you were to run the stress, mood, and metabolism test, also known as the thyroid adrenal hormone, you can run it right at home. If you have imbalanced thyroid or cortisol levels, you should not be fasting the whole morning. Because why? It's a greater stress. Fasting is a stress on the body. It's one more stress. And if you compound that with stress getting the kids ready, getting them to school, getting yourself to work, having to give a presentation, being stuck in traffic, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, we have to be careful, right? We have to be careful. Our bodies can only deal with so much stress before there's a neuroendoimmune response. The nervous system reacts with higher levels of epinephrine and norepinephrine, which reacts then with greater levels of cortisol, which then starts to increase levels of blood sugar, which then increases levels of insulin, and it creates more inflammation. We store more body fat, and the cycle repeats. So remember, this is all based on science. Did Ayurveda know the exact ins and outs? Maybe they did. Maybe they did it to a far greater degree than us. Maybe. Either way, they got it right. We're rediscovering it. For me in my practice, although I don't have anything wrong with a 12 to 8, I don't like people eating past 6 o'clock at night in an ideal world. I told you before that on Wednesday nights, I sometimes do eat at 7 o'clock at night. And the reason is I don't get out of work until about 6:30. So it's not conducive to eating before that. Now, could I make it happen? I could, but I'm seeing people in my practice all day that day, and I'm committed to that, which I just feel is the greater good for at least where I'm at right now. But you do your best. So try to finish your dinner before 6. Why? Because I want you in bed by 10 o'clock, and you need to stop eating 3 to 4 hours before bed. Again, this is 99.9% of the population advice. It's not the 1% or 0.1% with people with hypoglycemia, adrenal HPA axis issues. I'm not saying that. I can never give you all for one advice. So please understand that. The podcast would take 6 hours every day if I could give you every contraindication. But what I'm saying is this. So now if you don't eat at lunch, you can only get 2 meals in. 12 o'clock and then like 5 o'clock if you're going to finish by 6. And I don't believe that people can cram in 4 to 5 cups of vegetables at each one of those meals. And you can't food combine with fruit, so it's not going to work, so you never get any fruit in. And you can't eat every 2 hours because you're not going to have all that food digested. So I really believe, like they did in Ayurveda, more like a 10 o'clock for looking to lose weight. You can eat an hour after waking if you're someone that doesn't need to lose weight. I'm not saying that you can't do that. Not everybody needs to fast this long. I recommend 12 hours for almost every individual alive. Myself, I do 14 hours. It's about the right method for me. But again, once a week, I do a longer fast. I do a 24-hour once a week. We'll talk about that on another day. But that's about the right time for me. Why? Because my stress in work starts to get more at that time. And if I'm going to be ramping up stress, well, I want to help to counter that stress with food, which does actually help. Okay, so the first point is this. The ideal time for your 16-8 fast is actually 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Most importantly out of all of them is it's ending at 6 p.m. It is ending as the metabolism is starting to slow as the sun is setting, okay? Metabolism is absolutely strongest between about 10 and 2. Your largest meal of the day should be at about 1 o'clock if you're eating at 10. And that 10 o'clock breakfast, check out what I've recommended before. The absolute best breakfast should be super light. It should be easy to consume. It should be predominantly water-based. And of course, a smoothie or smoothie bowl fits that bill. Same with oatmeal if you're someone that actually needs to gain some weight, but probably this podcast isn't for you necessarily if you're looking for that. Okay, now let's get on to the second truth, okay? Because I'm committed this year too to keep my podcast to about 22 minutes. All right, so the truth number 2 is this. When we actually gave away my truth number 2, which is a 16-8 fast. Yes, they did that. And then starting at 10 to 6, we get in those 3 meals, 10 o'clock, 1 o'clock, and 6 o'clock. And why do we space it out 5 hours between the main meals, lunch and dinner? Okay, the reason we do that is that we want the blood sugar to come down after about 90 minutes to 2 hours after that meal. Okay, so when you eat, there may be a postprandial rise in blood sugar. So what does that mean? Well, That's normal. We don't want to spike too high, but we want it to come back down as quickly as possible. And if our bodies are insulin sensitive, it will be able to direct that to our liver, glycogen, replenish that. It's not going to add body fat because remember, you depleted a lot of that glycogen with your daily exercise, your 10,000 steps per day, and also with your overnight fast. So there we go. Okay, and then it's also going to replenish muscle glycogen. So we're good. That's why carbs aren't the enemy. You can absolutely have some carbs. You just can't overdo it. And in Fatlocity system, we teach you how many carbs you can eat because you have to customize your own protocol because everyone is an individual. Okay, so here's the thing. 5 hours between that lunch and that dinner. So 4 to 5 hours, all right? Your blood sugar will come down after 2, and then that gives you then that 2 hours to maybe even a little bit more where you're able to really tap that back into that body fat again. Okay, now let's look at the meal sizing. Moderate sized breakfast, but very easy to digest. Oatmeal is basically liquid based. And again, I know most people on a weight loss based program aren't going to be doing oatmeal. And I agree with that. We're starting out with a smoothie and we're doing low glycemic berries because there's so many phytonutrients in them. There's antioxidants and they are not going to spike your blood sugar if you do it correctly, contrary to people's popular viewpoint, which just isn't true. Because again, you can use a glucometer to look at these things. All right. And you're going to be using a good quality all-in-one, like the daily nutritional support or your favorite functional medicine formula. Okay. So let's move on from that. So easy to digest breakfast. We have our largest meal is at lunch. Okay. That doesn't mean you're overeating at lunch. It just means that it's your largest meal. And then at dinner, it is going to be your smallest meal of the day in an ideal world. Okay. Now, it can still be a decent size. You don't have to go hungry. But it's going to be low calorie, nutrient dense. So what does that mean? Well, it's going to mean predominantly vegetables. Okay, predominantly vegetables. Add some good olive oil in there. You can still add a little bit of Himalayan sea salt for a little flavor, maybe a little some cracked pepper, whatever you like. Some vegan-based protein or your favorite paleo protein, whatever works for you. But it's not going to be a big meal, okay? There'll be more vegetables to keep you satiated. And then an hour or two after dinner, you can have some chamomile tea. You can have some ginger tea. You can do whatever you'd like. Turmeric tea later at night. And that can be kind of how you're fasting into the evening. And all of that works. So all of that's great. Make it hot tea, never cold. All right, especially before bed. So there we go. There's 2 out of our 3. And our third one is this. A lot of people are doing 2 meals only a day, but they're doing it incorrectly. So I already told you before, I don't believe you can get enough nutrients for the day in terms of micros by only eating 2 meals a day. I know that you can get enough protein. No doubt about it. You can eat 50 grams of protein at 1 meal. No doubt about it. Or over 2 meals. Easy, right? 60, 70, 80 grams. Easy. You can do 40 at a meal. I mean, I used to eat 5 or 6 meals, all of those with 50 grams per meal. So you can do it, right? No doubt about it. Not healthy for you, but you can do it. So here's the thing though. I don't know that you can get enough vegetables in. I don't know that most people can eat 4 cups to 5 cups of vegetables at each meal for those 2 meals. It seems like a lot, right? I don't know how the processing would be and how much of an energy drain that would be trying to break down that much food at 2 meals. So again, I'm just throwing that out there for you. It's something to think about. You don't even have to agree with me on it. I just want you to think about it, right? We don't have to be enemies in this health-based space. We can have a healthy dialogue. We can debate. We can go back and forth, and we can still be friends at the end of the day. People make enemies out of people with a different opinion. It's why we get into silly conflicts. We can discuss these things. And at the end of the day, if we still believe our own vantage point, that's okay too. We can still be friends. I'm friends with people in the industry that are the most really gung-ho keto-based people. And that's okay. They're living their truth and they're actually helping some people with that particular modality. So good. I still think they're great and I actually still think they're super knowledgeable. I don't have a bad viewpoint of them. And so, again, I want this as open dialogue. Okay, but let's say you are someone that believes in only eating 2 meals per day or even 1 meal per day. This is going to blow your mind. It should never be dinner. It should never be dinner. If you are to skip 1 meal, it should always be dinner. And the reason is that when you go back to all of the ancient yogis, when you go back to the monks, they're doing a later breakfast, and they're doing an early dinner. That's what they were doing. Now, it doesn't mean they lived the longest life or anything like that, but what it means is this. They knew never to eat their largest meal at the end of the day. They knew that their body required fuel during the day, but not necessarily before bed. Super important tip. Super important tip. Almost nothing will make you healthier than having a small to a non-existent dinner. Now, do I skip dinner? Absolutely not. Is it difficult to make dinner your smallest meal of the day? Yes. Why? Because of social norms. We get home at the end of the day, I have dinner with my family. Oh, am I going to skip dinner? Am I going to sit there while they're eating? No. It's very socially awkward and difficult to do that. So it's hard enough. Like this week, just finished up from last week, the detox, right? So for the first 2 days, I'm doing shakes. That's challenging enough, right? Imagine never having dinner. It's difficult. So what I'm saying is you make it a smaller meal of the day, still easy to digest so that it's out of your stomach before bed. You don't want to eat a giant steak for dinner. Trust me. Your sleep will be off. And you can track these things now. You can use biometric-based devices in order to prove this to yourself. So what I'm saying is this. If you're only to eat 2 meals a day, you're going to have breakfast probably a couple hours after waking. You're going to hydrate first with some water, some daily fruit and vegetable blend, some apple cider vinegar, like whatever you want to do, okay? Whatever you like in the morning, your tea, good. And then you'll have dinner an hour or 2 later. And then what you'll do is you'll have a little later lunch. Again, if you want to go back to what the monks did, they did a later breakfast mid-morning, and they did like a 3-4 o'clock or so, let's say, dinner. Now, if you want to go back to just saying 2 meals a day and still getting in your 16-8, well, you'd have breakfast, let's say somewhere around 8 o'clock or so in the morning, and your lunch would be right around early afternoon. And so that's what you would do. So if you want the absolute healthiest way to just have 2 meals a day, it is always putting less in your stomach before bed. So those are 3 truths that I wanted to bring you today from Ayurvedic medicine. If you look at the biometrics, if you look at the research and you go back to the natural diphasic beings that we are, the natural circadian rhythms, where we wake up, we ease into the day, we hydrate, we have an easy to digest breakfast, we get moving, and then we have our biggest meal. Well, the sun's overhead, somewhere around 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock or so, the sun's starting to go down. We have our last meal before sunset. And then we relax our bodies. We prepare ourselves for bed. We have a deep night's sleep. We wake up with the sun. Remember, just because we live in houses, just because we are walled off from the elements outside does not mean that our bodies are not in tune and in touch with nature. We have to start to get back there. The more in tune we are with the natural rhythms of the earth, the healthier we will be. Thank you so much for tuning into today's Total Wellness Tuesday. As always, if this was helpful, please do feel free to share the show with anyone you believe it could serve. Before you go, I wanted to share a personal story with you. The real reason I began to get well finally is because I figured out what was wrong with me. And that might seem pretty obvious, but I went from doctor to doctor for over 2 years before discovering at-home functional medicine lab testing. These are the labs that enabled me to finally figure out what was wrong with my hormones, blood sugar, electrolytes, and gut health. And once I knew what was wrong, I could then follow a proven plan in order to rebalance my body from the inside out. This is why I believe so strongly in functional medicine lab testing and why I've made it my mission to share these labs with the world. Now at equa.life, you can order an at-home lab test or lab bundle for you and your family and be able to complete it within the week. Plus, the EquaLife difference is that you're not left to try to read and figure out these labs on your own. We explain what your lab numbers mean, what they mean in the much bigger picture, and then how to go about rebalancing your body in order to heal. To see our full selection of lab tests or to set up a free lab selection call to find out what labs may be best for you, simply head on over to equa.life/labs. And do remember, we ship these all over the world. To find out more and to set up your free lab selection call, simply head on over to equa.life/labs. That's EQUI.LIFE/labs.